Welcome to another episode, but not just any other episode. Beyond the Veil of the Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Jay.Drewz, also known as the Blue Fire Priest, Blue Fire, with my co-hosts, not last and not least, side by side. Together we ride. Son of the Sun, Black Sun Shaman, Manu Ray L, and any other attribution and appellation he may choose. Or be named by those who have the ability to name. What's going on, my brother?
Making ever positive forward motion to my highest fields of experience. Enjoying perfect resonance with my highest good right now.
Yes, right now. Now faith. We're getting ready to talk about that. Faith in action, the creative force in action. We talked about the language of the living language, or we could even say the language of the living, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can make reference to many holy books and in the tying in of statements made by the prophet, the messenger, the master sage, the teacher, et cetera, et cetera. You know, for example, when Christ said, "Let the dead bury their dead." Powerful statement, and a lot to unpack within that statement alone. But yeah, man. Last week,
he went in to say, "Life and death is in the power of the tongue."
Yeah,
which is a linguistical expression force. But yeah.
Absolute facts. So last week we started off with the Kaballah, the Cabals. We didn't quite get too much into the Cabals, but we did define for the audience what a Cabal actually is, you know, dealing with the political and spiritual aspects of the use of that term, and being that it was directly rooted in the Kabbalah, you know, or taken out of or extracted from the Kabbalah as a term of reference. And we talked a little bit about the power behind the curtain, which is that creative force and the use of it through language, speaking things that
energy
are not.
Energy is God. God is energy.
And yet still so much more, right?
Right.
Because you have the solids and liquids and gases, and you have all the other elemental presentations of that force. The reconstruction, the resurrection of the real estates, we're going to go a little more into hopefully today for you. We don't want to be too long-winded, but we also don't want to cheat you out of a wonderful experience. You know, of course, like, share, and subscribe. You know, show your love. YouTube.com/J at Jay.Drewz3692 at Jay.Drewz3692. That's for both of us. Shared channel. I just set it up. That's all, y'all. So you're supporting both of us if you support me. You know what I'm saying? Also, his website, www.blacksunshaman.com. You know, get your nutritional.
Where you can get your nutritional. Where you can get your nutritional needs. My primary focus is I am a para-exorcist. So I want them parasites out of your body so you can get your own energy. All of the supplements and things necessary for that are there. And also there is your energy field, protection and cleansing for it. And you can get products for all three of those things so you can be reconciled unto yourself.
Yes, indeed. We shall proceed to give you what you want and need. Well, we don't need you to want, because want and need are one and the same. We got to get our language together, right? That's what the point of this this breakdown. I almost said lecture, but we haven't even done the lecture yet. So, you know, there are going to be finer points to this that we can definitely unlock and unpack for you. Just share your interests, comment, like, share, subscribe. Once again, you can also find us on Deeper Dives UNL on rumble.com. We have a locals. There's a second podcast that I'm involved with, and we're gonna do an all-star show real soon. We're gonna have all three of us together, bring both podcasts together. We're gonna do a melting pot show that should be an incredible experience. And yeah, look forward to doing that too for you all. But yeah, man, Kaballah, man, we left off. We had some really good highlights in that discussion. Creative force, man. Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
So we didn't get to tap into the golem last time, so we can use this as a moment to tap in to the golem slightly. Okay, so you got a golem. A golem was supposed to be made by rabbi. The rabbi used the golem to defend the city against attack. This is one of the times that you hear about the creation of a golem. But as far as the creative energy behind the golem, you have readings that different parts of your body give off when they're alive. You have measurable energy that comes from the heart, measurable energy that comes from the mind, measurable energy that comes from the lower nature, stomach, vocal cords have a range that they can operate in. All of these are measurable energetic things that determine our aliveness. If they go past a certain rate, then we're considered dead. So in the creation of the golem, they're able to maintain these sounds, but the golem doesn't have the essence of life. It's not connected to the source per se. It's a synthetic production of this aliveness. It's a synthetic production of the vibrations that are within the spectrum of being alive. And they use the Kaballah living language that they have access to know what each of those ranges were and to create a spark, for lack of not talking your ear off, a spark on each
Oh no.
level to bring that that golem into a living state. And then charging items. When speaking the Kabbalah's living language, you see people dealing in amulets, you see people having rosaries, you see Ifa priests having beads with a certain amount of beads on it, 119 or 108, depending on where. But all of these beads are energized through using the vocal cords and the hands and going through the beads and saying something over and over again until the object is charged with that particular idea. Then anybody who picks it up or you who accesses it, all that stored energy is available in that item. Well, this is how they give a golem an instruction. A golem, in that particular case, instruction was to protect the people. The way he was charged and energized was to use Kabbalah's living language to make sure that he was charged or energized at the same way a bead was through those synthetic energy centers, those synthetic tree of life centers, those synthetic points chides, those synthetic nadis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nodal. We say nodal point.
Nodal points. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, when someone irritates us, we call it annoying. We are annoyed with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We brought up the golem, so let's go there. We once again, these are not meant to be taken exactly literal. We're giving you visual reference points, and we're using the simplest means of internet search. I won't call it research, but in some instances it is, because it is still accurate in some instances, and it will lead you to other references that can be of assistance in your study. So we will not get into that stone throwing as some people do. YouTube scholar and so on and so forth. Yeah, no, we're not doing that today. But, you know, to each their own. So,
listen, Google got to catch up with the caching. Don't you ever forget it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you know, and Tumblr just scrambles sometimes words within a search. So you might randomly get something good or randomly get something that's absolutely false. And, you know, you can't really blame Google. It just is what it is. You just have to know it, what you're looking for, whether you're being spirit led or, you know, you have some other physical, scholarly or academic reference point to go off of. Now, the evolution of Golem. Ha! So, the Hebrew ancestor of the word Golem means shapeless man. And the original mythical golems started as lumps of clay that were formed into figures and brought to life by means of a charm or a combination of letters forming a sacred word. In the Middle Ages, golems were thought to be perfect servants. Their only fault was that they were sometimes too literal or mechanical in fulfilling their master's orders. 16th century, the golem was thought of as a protector of the Jews in times of persecution, but following its interest into English, golem acquired a less friendly second sense, referring to a man-made monster that inspired many of the back from the dead creations of classic horror fiction. These days, the word golem is frequently used in the gaming world for a variety of foes and beasties made of material ranging from ice to iron to even, in one game, candy. Interesting stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
it reminds me of that the African zombie. In a lot of their traditions, they have a zombie state of existence that someone could be put in, where they follow the instructions of whoever created them to the extent that they don't even remember their life previous to that much of a degree, and they're just doing whatever it is that they're programmed by their creator to do.
That reminds me of Voodoo. Some of the documentaries that I've seen and some of the stories that I've been told by people of Haiti. And there's a plant that they make a powder substance from. And they can either blow it in your face where you become an unwilling a recipient of that designation, or you could willingly go through ceremonial initiation where you are put in that state of mind by that, that plant substance in order to be programmed to do things that would be considered beyond the human physicality. So elaborate on that. Like, so when we see that type of thing, right? Are we looking at Kaballah in action? Are we looking at that creative force? Whether we interpret it good, bad, or indifferent, is that an example? Or would that
Yes,
not be
indeed.
an example?
Yes, indeed. It is an example of the Kaballah, and it is potentially being weaponized at this point. But we may get into that later or not. But you have
please do. No, by all means. I would say not even potentially. I would say look at the 1980s. Look at the free love movement, LSD, acid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They introduced them all, and these. So Kabbalah's living language has different forms of communication for each sphere of consciousness. Okay, so if this sphere of consciousness operated between 40 and 50, then they put a frequency that operated between 40 and 50. Then whatever operation you have going on here is now under the control or influence of a particular whoever's running the synthetic vibration. So let's say, for instance, they created a golem and they gave the golem the signal to defend the city like they did. Then that would be operating at the signals for the brain all the time. That would be a consistent, repeated frequency that was being played to the mind field of this being. So when you deal with voodoo and they put a plant substance on you, different plants access different centers of consciousness. This is why they've been made illegal in this country. They're Schedule 1, Schedule 2 drugs, even though they're naturally occurring, because they don't want people to have access to certain levels of consciousness that may expose things that they don't want exposed. So they don't allow you to have those hallucinogens to activate those brain centers. But if a person activates those brain centers and is aware of it and can speak on that level, then that's how they create a zombie. They'll put something out in the mind and the person's brain is not working themselves anymore. So they have to have another signal, because usually when you're dealing with a zombie in voodoo, the person dies first. That's how zombies are raised from the grave. Zombies are raised from the dead. So their electrical functioning ceased, but if you have a carrier, then you can pick that up in their body. So they usually put something in the mouth, create a potion for the person to drink. They'll tell you the process of the voodoo thing. They'll give a person a specific drink or something they'll put in their body. In the golem, they put something in their mouth. They put a spell in their mouth to keep it alive. And this is all to do with dealing directly with the frequency that for the operation of the mind, for the operation of the heart, for the operation of different parts of the body. It's like giving a signal. Now we get to the weaponized part. Could it be weaponized? We got a lot of towers, we got a lot of signals, we got a lot of things going up, a lot of things in our house that produce vibration. If the vibration operates on the same level as our mind operates, or the same level as our heart, then those signals can now be perceived by something that was only a natural field. Now something synthetic is able to transmit into an only natural field. And that's cheating. That's like going into church and somebody playing a signal and you hear what you think is the voice of God in your head. And you be obedient because you think it's the voice of God and you have such love and compassion for God that you would do anything for God. So then you're turned into a zombie or you're turned into a golem for the sake of a signal, not a naturally occurring creative overtone, if that makes any sense.
Sure, absolutely. So, man, when you have an addicted society that has all sorts of electromagnetic stimuli and what you would say, some might say advanced technology, frequency-based technology, advanced to the point of weaponization, mind control capability, right? You essentially have the potential makings of, right? Gosh, how can I put this? Pockets of splinter cells that could be activated at any given moment to take action that is being transmitted to them through the form of we would say subliminal programming, right? Let's touch on that just for a brief second, because I do want to get into, the estates, how this applies to our ability to resurrect what some might have considered the dead estates or the loss of the estates to occupiers. Let's see here.
Just briefly on the splinters. If energy magnetosphere has a direct effect on the DNA. The formulation of the DNA over the top creates a spiral. You can see that spiral in nature, and you can see that spiral in ancient architecture. Okay, the spiral is shared genetically inside of us, depending on our geographical location. Since we're talking about the estates, so the energy transference. How do I put this? So this is how they can weaponize it. If you have energy coming into your system, you're going to activate another part of your DNA. Our DNA can be turned on and turned off, activated and deactivated, depending on what we're exposed to. Depending on our air density. Let's just use that one as an example. If you go to higher altitudes, you activate a portion of your DNA strand. If you go to lower altitudes, you activate another portion of your DNA strand. depending on your exposure, and that can be accessed as well through frequency. So if you send an energy channel, which is wireless internet, we know it's capable. Tesla did it already. But if you send energy through wireless means to someone and their energy is increased, you can activate within them strength. You can activate within them different levels of genetic information, and you can empower them to use it. Now, if you give them an instruction at the same time, then they think it is something outside of themselves that has given them the strength, and they owe a debt to it. It's still a choice, but it's a choice that they're like, I wouldn't have this superpower if it wasn't God.
Yeah. So, wow. As you were speaking, I was just looking up the etymon of subliminal, and I think this is highly relevant and enlightening. Let's just take a look at this. Let's see. Share this to the screen. All right. Hopefully you can see this, brother. Let's see. 1580s of language style, etc., expressing lofty ideas in an elevated manner. It comes from Sublime. So entries linked to subliminal. Let me back up a little bit because I want to bring clarity. Okay, so you can see subliminal, adjective, below the threshold of consciousness or sensation. 1873, formed from the source of sublime, Latin sublimis, from lemon or limen, genitive liminis. Now, all this ties also to another word. It looks like luminous and luminous would be related, but I have to look into that specifically. But apparently, it is a loan translation of German unter der Schwelle, probably destroying that language. Des Bewusstseins, beneath the threshold of consciousness, from John Friedrich Herbart, 1776 to 1841, I guess is when he lived, author of a textbook on psychology published in 1824. The scare over subliminal messages in advertising. Now, look how long ago this was. Came in 1957. Now, sublime. 1580s of language style, etc., expressing lofty ideas in an elevated manner. From French, sublime, 15th century, or directly from Latin, sublimis, uplifted, high, borne aloft, lofty, exalted, eminent, distinguished, possibly originally sloping up to the lintel, from sub, up to. Of ideas subject, striking the mind with a sense of grandeur or power. So, tied into what you were saying, it's like when a person is saying, for example, I'm hearing from God, I'm hearing from the Holy Spirit, I'm hearing from this, the thought process of those possibly in the scientific world is you're having delusions of grandeur. You're making more of yourself of importance than you actually should. But in fact, you could be speaking from a place that would bring, I don't want to use the word salvation, but you might bring some type of protection or warning, right? To take heed to.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it could be to recreate the appearance, the relevance, etc., of someone or something else. Which, you spoke on the Golems. There's another one that's not so well known, but it's becoming more popular, at least in my search engines, right? For myself, coming across this reminder of things that I've read in my past. I'm like, wait a minute. There's another term for a tiny human, right? Humunculus.
Yeah.
What the hell is a humunculus, and what relevance does it have to the modern world? And it appears it was very, very well known within esoteric communities, or those who were into practical, I'm going to say this way, practical magic by way of scientific discovery. So a homunculus, very small human or humanoid creature. Very small human being, popularized in 16th century alchemy and 19th century fiction. It has historically referred to the creation of a miniature, fully formed human. Now, here's what's interesting for people who would say this is complete fiction. I'm getting some feedback.
No.
I'm getting some
It
feedback.
I can hear you clear on my end.
No, I can hear you as well. It's just there's a feedback in my headphones. It sounds like an echo, possibly coming from your side. See something. All right. Still hear it faintly. All right. So yeah, no, it's very real. If it weren't real, then it says, why is a homunculus illegal? While it can be done, it is generally considered a crime to do so.
Did you say a homunculus is illegal?
Illegal. While it can be done, it is generally considered a crime to do so, due to the belief that a human soul in a homunculus body would have a less fulfilling life than in their own body. Even though,
have you heard of Star in a Jar? Have you heard of the Star in a Jar?
I wouldn't compare it to this, even though they are related, because the Star in the Jar is not a human form sharing a fractional soul.
True,
you
very
know
true.
It is a living thing.
I only mention it because it would be the base of a homunculus. A homunculus would be built around it. You get what I'm saying? Like it would be it would be built around it. Should I do this? Yes, I'm gonna do it. The frequencies in a mother's womb change with each trimester's building. Like for a heart, there's a specified frequency. Then for the lung development, there's a specified frequency. The brain development, there's a specified frequency. And it's all based around the originating frequency that surrounded the heart. But yeah, that's why I mentioned the Star in a Jar, because when you were talking about this homunculus, it made me remember that the divine spark exists within us. So a foundational start to this process may be maybe a star in a jar, and it's something they can look up. Easy.
It's not illegal to do a star in a jar, but it is illegal to create a homunculus, even though it. Check this out. Okay, so a homunculus versus a golem. Golem was created from the earth, meaning some elements: ice, water, dirt, sand, trees, wood. Wood, leaves. I mean, the golem is something that can be called forth from any natural part of the earthen realm. But the homunculus emerges directly from the human seed itself. And we'll let you use your imagination on it. Nourished by fertilizer and blood. Unlike the golem, who is born fully formed, the homunculus has to grow into his final form like all creatures of nature. So when you look at the creation story, it kind of gives you a little more insight, if not a lot more insight, into the possibility of how we were formed, made in the likeness and image of that which we were taught to call God, which simply resembles that which is called upon or called forth from within, or that which is invoked, as if to summon a deity to a ritual sacrifice. And then we understand why blood plays such a role within certain Kabbalistical rituals, ceremonies, invocations, and initiations. I know you want to expound on that.
They do that into human. Okay, since we're talking about the reincarnated estate, I want to go over just this briefly. Just want to touch it. The people whose genetic information is tied to a genetic area, tied to a genetic temple's activation, right? Tied to an estate. The people whose genetics are. There's a group of individuals who give them handlers, and they watch them their whole life. They give them mansions. They make them stars. They call them, stars and superstars. These stars and superstars are the, inheritors of the reincarnated estate. Their energy is being monitored and directed. They are the star in the jar, is what I'm saying. The reason I brought it up at this moment, they can be considered the star in the jar. The Jewish, allegedly, let's not say that. The secret society, let's take that out altogether. Take them out altogether. The secret societies, ritualistic things bring certain entities into being through sacred energy exchange. Look at the first letter of each word. Rituals. They'll bring a person in, and then this person will then become a star or a superstar. They'll make sure to keep them away from certain areas and make sure to keep them in other areas. They'll watch them when they're sleeping, watch them when they're awake, listen to their music and review it before it ever goes out. Make sure they are following the guidelines. It's because they may potentially be the star in the jar. But, and then blood. And then I'm going to leave it alone. I quit. I promise. I promise I quit. So the blood, before you're put in the ground, blood has information, it has data, it lets the earth know what was done to you when you die. It has information. When the blood goes into the ground, it communicates. It's interesting that everybody who gets buried in the ground, unless by some means other than they should have been, their blood is removed from them. Especially if you're dealing with famous people, their blood is definitely removed from them before they ever make it into the ground. And then what they utilize that blood, that genetic information for, and blah, blah, blah. Who knows what type of cloning centers they have in Atlanta, allegedly, or what type of cloning centers they have in other locations. They said that they got pictures of people who look spitting image of these stars in famous positions over hundreds of years. Cabbage Patch Kids,
Let's have some fun right quick. Oh man, I'm still getting that echo. Maybe try mute for just a second if you can on your side.
All right, we'll do.
I want to see if that happens when
just a second. I don't know why it's not offering me the button.
Asteria. See how they play the language game. Just to give y'all an example, I don't mind if anybody wants to comment and offer any correction based upon scholarly pursuits of their own. However, I would say the point of me showing this is just how closely linguistics based upon culture can have similarity and yet be presented to us as if there is no correlation or no connectivity. So maybe, let's see, I will start with Astarte. Okay, yes, so Astarte, goddess of fertility and reproduction. He's back. Let's see, T's back in. Let's see here. All right, so I'm reading about Astarte. I don't know if you can see up on the screen. Astarte, an ancient Semitic deity, goddess of fertility and reproduction, worshipped by the Phoenicians and Canaanites, also called chestnut clam, any of several marine bivalve mollusks. So wait. What is a starfish? Because I don't remember. Marine invertebrates. They're not fish. Okay. Marine waters. Sea stars live underwater. Resemblance to fish ends. They do not have gills, scales, or fins. Let's see. So it doesn't really describe them as mollusks, but it does say that they are marine creatures, of course, and live in seawater. Now, Astarte. Back to this. I never knew this part of the definition until today. Chestnut clam, any of several marine bivalve mollusks of the genus Astarte, having a somewhat triangular chestnut brown shell. Let's see. Also known, Astarte also is known as the goddess of sexual love and fertility, but also has associations with war. In biblical Hebrew, the noun Astarat, derived from the divine name Astarte, which means increase, progeny.
When you're dealing with wire gauges, you get the more energy you want to go through, the wider gauge thing you use. I just wanted to say them Astroff poles, or what do you call them? They're not called Astroff poles no more. They called what is it, they got one in Washington. It's got a point at the top. Oh goodness. I can't think of the name of it, but when you want to increase energy to get a larger coverage area, which we were talking about spheres of consciousness being a coverage area. If you want a wider coverage area, then you take it from a wire and then you make an Astroff pole. An Astroff pole provides wireless energy. Just adding on to what you're saying.
That's just a coincidental name. There's no correlation. Just like I'm going to show this next goddess, even though it sounds almost exactly in pronunciation like Astarte, it has no correlation. There's no connection. And both of them are allegedly Semitic names as well. So, yeah, we're going to prove that pole you're discussing, even though it's in this definition we're about to read, has no connection to the goddess or the reference to what her name means as far as progeny. What is progeny? Progenitor. What is a progenitor? A parent. What is a parent? The mother or father of an infant or newborn child. Anyway, all right, so Asherah was a Semitic god who was worshipped as Baal's consort. No, not the Baal that was trying to lead the priests of Jezebel to destroy their true God's prophets. But okay. Let me get it together. By the Canaanites and the Amorites. So not the Phoenicians this time. This god or goddess was worshipped by the Canaanites and the Amorites, not the Canaanites and the Phoenicians. But let's go back just so you know I'm not tripping. So it says Astarte, Semitic deity of goddess of fertility and reproduction, worshipped by the Phoenicians and Canaanites. But now those same people, Canaanites and Amorites, Shera. Okay, so let me go back or further back up here. People also ask, are Astarte and Asherah the same? Although Astarte is often confused with Asherah in biblical commentary, the two were distinct goddesses. Not disputing that. Just want the audience to be clear on it. And the Asherah referenced in the Bible is the fertility pole. What was that you were telling me about there a second ago? Oh, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want you to pick back up on that in just a moment. The fertility pole or sacred tree of the goddesses or goddess, not an illusion, an allusion, ALL, allusion to Astarte, though some translations of the Bible seem to suggest this. Isn't to suggest to allude? I'm sorry. The contradictory just... Asherah was a god who was worshipped as Baal's consort by the Canaanites and the Amorites. The Jews often worshipped her alongside Jehovah, creating a false religion that their nation was judged for. First, Asherah was connected with fertility, childbirth, and motherhood. Doesn't have to do with
like a tree.
But doesn't it have to do with progeny as well? Astarte in Hebrew means increase, progeny, an indication of Astarte's fertility functions, but they're not the same. Asherah, though, fertility, childbirth, and motherhood. These states were highly valued, but dangerous and often elusive in ancient Israel. Now, reason I bring these to light, and before I give that explanation, let me go. Star goddess. Asteria, ancient Greek transliteration, is derived from the Greek word aster, meaning star. Itself is inherited from the Proto-Indo-European root. Isn't that what gave way to Semitic language? Okay.
So a tree produces enough energy to run several houses. Like your average little baby tree in the backyard could run a whole house as far as electricity is concerned. Now, an Asheroth pole, on the other hand, is the synthetic version of a tree.
Or is it just a tree replicated using synthetic? Well, yeah, you say the same thing, right? But when we think in those terms, the living language translates on all layers and levels of what we call existence, which is the plane of experience, where we're experiencing that which is material or matters, right? Or materializes. So, yeah, absolutely. Starfish, as you brought the star in a jar. Let's take a look at it again. What does it mean? What does it symbolize? Regeneration and renewal. Now, we could deal with good luck and fortune, of course, which are the other two aspects its spiritual representation in. But as we see, it goes back to Asteria, which goes back to Asherah, and Astarte. And it all deals with a star. So when we deal with when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. So, spell casting, living language. And then we talked a little bit about liturgical language, which is usually has the more religious context, but it really deals with liturgy, which means to deal with
and it's usually
the other side
in
of the
black,
veil, right?
and it's usually in black ink.
Right, because it
Usually.
deals with that which has entered into the immutable as opposed to transmutable. That which is dead, right? Which brings me to our next thing. Cryptids. We'll save that for another time. Sorry. I mean, we did talk about them before, but I mean, when you talked about, you did mention zombies, which we were told are the living dead, right? But then we have vampire Nosferatu, also called vampires, which would be the undead. What is undead? Isn't undead like living?
I don't even know how to address if there are sun people and there are moon people, okay? Just for the sake of this conversation. There are sun people and there are moon people. The sun is a reflection of the solar light. So then the moon is actually feeding off of the sun. So if you have a people who come out of a cave and they usually operate in nocturnal hours.
Say what?
Then they're going to feed off of the sun people. Just like the moon feeds off of the sun. They're going to mimic its light. They're going to culture vulture.
I
digress.
I'm so no, don't digress. Please continue. Please continue. Literally.
No, that was it. That was it. I was just saying that. So when they're dealing with vampire and vampiric energy and talking about vampires, they usually paint them in a pale color. They usually have them not outside in the caves. The sun hurts their skin. You know what I mean? These are all have similarities to a group of people who openly admit that their origin was cave-based. And so, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking that. You know what I mean? I don't have anything against that. I know that we're all people of the sun on one level or another, and we all have our different compilations of melanin and our different areas of expertise depending on our solar exposure and our geographical location. So even they have their area of expertise and they have their things that they can operate in and do and genetic markers that make them brilliant and beautiful people. But I'm just addressing the vampire aspect of it in that they would feed and mimic just like anything else feeds from the sun.
I agree with you. I see it in that light as well. See something.
The part that sucks though is they might rip out your neck for your genetics. You know, those vampires. Rip your whole artery out. Take all your blood. Write melanin conferences on it and charge thousands of dollars for each genetic outlining that they do every 4 years. Just joking.
Well, let's take a look at something here. All right, so for those of you who like to study different holy books and for those of you who are also focused on the Bible and your faith is in its words and uh, inspiration. Let's take a look here. If any one of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn among them eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. And I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life. Therefore I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. What's up, brother?
Oh no, I was just thinking about the data capabilities of blood again.
Oh, I thought I was transitioning us towards the estates.
Okay, so
we're gonna do a whole thing on it, but remember we're gonna do a little teaser. Remember, we're talking about some of us that have been told that we are Israel and Hebrew Israelites, and we wanna give some point of reference to the reason why there is that common shared opinion.
You know, something. What do you? I guess this would be like something fun for you to do on your own time.
Sure.
When you go look up the genetic spiral. They just recently mapped out the genetics. They mapped it out from over the top so you can see the spirals of genetics, different strands of it. They have different strand types that correspond to different geographical locations. It's interesting when you get into it that you'll see the exact same symbology on a cathedral window that's built by ancient civilizations. You'll see the exact same designs on different temples written on the wall. You'll see crop circles in specified areas that keep reoccurring, and they're the same geometrical pattern. It's just interesting, as if the people are tied to the land in some way.
Like bloodline estates? Is that what you're suggesting? So, in other words,
very possibly.
In other words, what that might suggest if we go further down the spiral, no pun intended, that an invader or an occupier would need access to the blood, and it wouldn't be sufficient to just intermarry with the blood, but that would start the sequence of programming to control the estate through those who are of the blood, but also have some type of permanent connection to the occupier.
Yes, indeed.
Would you like to expound? Yes, would you like
to? I'll just tell a story that may have pertinence or it may not. I've noticed that during colonization, a lot of times the Roman Catholic Church comes in with their charity work, and I so appreciate them. And they create parishes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh that hard.
I did mean to laugh just like that hard. They create parishes and orphanages, and they take on children that have lost their parents during war and other events that may have been enacted in those locations right after the Jesuit priests leave. But it's interesting that those children go through so much and produce generations of children that are intermingled with the races that they I don't know how to conquered that particular area. They end up being reintroduced to the area after their brief stay in these orphanages and things. So if they weren't in the bloodline to begin with, if the people who were coming in weren't in the bloodline to begin with, when they have access to the children, it's almost a guarantee that they make it into the bloodline, and not in a way that it creates hatred. It's almost in a way that is a salvation, redemption. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for providing me food, clothing, and shelter when my parents were lost. So, so there's no resistance there if they ask them to do acts that may be against their will otherwise. If they knew that they had done those things to their parent, they definitely wouldn't help them open a door that they couldn't get behind. So, that's my story. That's my story.
Absolutely. Something interesting. Also, this should be shared as pertinent, relevant to subject matter. Pardon me. Sorry, I need to go do this here. Okay.
Such great humanitarians.
The search. Oh. Yeah. If you all can see this, I did a search on Kaballah and blood. So it says here, therein lies the deeper significance of the colors of the various blood cells. The nourishing cells are colored red, the color associated in Kaballah as the divine attribute of judgment and severity. Gevura, reflecting the fact that their benevolent function must be colored by restraint. Which would explain by anyone that speaks in judgment against him, they call it a blood libel.
You made me think of the colors that are in the genetic spirals. The amino acids are, and their composition are determined by colors, and the predominant one is red, and red also is associated with blood. So when we're talking about a living language, there we go again, speaking on it at a different level. You were speaking on that level, and then it refreshed me on that genetic spiral and on the cathedral windows. There's colors that represent the interchanging points of the genetic spiral.
Absolutely. And then there are tonal frequencies when it mentions atonement. And then the god Aton, which is a form of the Aten we spoke about last week, which directly comes from the sun, which represents that particular light. When they were serving sin in the desert, sin AI. So not to go too far down that path, but sin was actually an entity and not an action. And those that served sin were serving a form of the moon that was reflecting or absorbing the light from the sun all day long. The Aton, the A10. So tetragram Aton. And then what is atonement? And that is why blood is so important. In Judaism, blood can be regarded as a holy form of sacrifice or representative of a covenant. As in the case of circumcision, blood is also seen as polluting when regarding the laws of kashrut and nida. So then when a woman is on her lunar cycle, every lunar cycle that we refer to as a month under the guise of a calendar, which is really just a schedule of fees. But what was the fee for sin? The fee for sin, the Bible says, is death. So there's a shedding of the living cells in her body that have to die, and then blood has to be shed. And so then we still want to look to all these patriarchal symbolisms for redemption and resurrection when we see obviously where the suppression of the reflective energy is what regenerates in the sons and daughters, which are the daughters, of course, female sons, not to take away from their divine feminine attributes. It's just a truth. It's just where that term originates. So, but yeah, I mean, we can go into this, of course, for hours. But we won't today. But yeah, I tapped into something. But listen, Linda. You got to understand that these things are not incidental, coincidental, or accidental. This is all a part of the living language. Death is a part of life. Death is an extension of life. And the state of, what's the word, rest, it's like a pause in between actions. That's it. All right. Pause in between frequency transmission, and then it resumes on a different bandwidth. So when we deal with atonement, I'm gonna go back to that for just a second. Aton, we deal with a frequency of the sun or light itself. And when we deal with Luna, that which is lunar, we're dealing with we're dealing with a deity. And I hate to use that word because I'm not a religious person at this juncture. And I know others of you are going further than just what you do every day into understanding what we should practice and what we should focus on manifesting, right? So sin is not an action. Sin is a frequency. I'm going to just say that. And even when you're dealing with science and math, right? Sine, cosine, secant, cosecant, cone, seen in the Spanish tongue, which derives from the Latin, sin being without, cone being with, as in conjunction or conjoined, sin being like to be singled or separated out or away from. Go ahead. Go. Chime in, bro. Chime in.
There are naturally occurring magnetic lines that also have energy output locations. So if there was there are naturally occurring areas where energy is high. We'll put it like that, where energy is very high in that specified area. So in that specified area, there may be a creature that cannot exist outside of that area. It cannot function. It cannot exist outside of that area. So when you're dealing with, they say that the protector of the woods is a large snake in this area. And there's all of these different entities. If you go in that side of the forest, then you're going to encounter fairies or Humunculus. If you go in that part of the forest, you're going to encounter leprechauns. If you go in that part of the forest, you're going to encounter centaurs. In each specified area, the genetics are affected by the magnetosphere and energy of a geographical location, meaning that you find a specific type of animal here that you won't find over there. The reason for their difference is their geographical locations and the evolution that came from them being in that geographical location. When you watch any movie where predominantly Russians, but other individuals are going to overtake or kill some mystical creature, they always have a place. They find a place where it's getting its power from. It's either like a grotto or they go down and it's some pool down beneath the earth that's producing a certain, you know what I mean, something that keeps this thing alive. So they go disconnect that power in order to kill it. Well, just observation in Kabbalah's living language, observation in creative language. If creative language works for us on that level, we can see our heart being formulated around a vibration, and we come into existence based on that vibratory field and the energy that's coming from the heart. Then why would it be any different for the earth and its ability to generate species, beings of all sorts? And then when humans do it, we call it gods. We name it gods. We'll put a whole bunch of energy into a form, and then this form starts to do stuff. It starts to actually perform acts. They'll be like, by this name, this name,
which really
I got healed.
Which really, I don't know that reference is used to a T in other languages. But in English, being a prepositional language, meaning descriptive in nature, almost to a fault, because there's so many ways within that language structure to say the same thing using various terms, which have assimilative meanings, right? So, for example, what you're saying, correct me if I'm not mistaken, if I am mistaken, rather. In certain spiritually energized places and naturally energized places, because we could say nature and spirit meet within these places.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to cause these things to occur amongst the people would be higher, right?
Way higher. And depending, well, let me not say that. Depending on the frequency. But when you're dealing in nature of high levels of energy, you're dealing with more than a person. Just an example. They still don't know how much piezoelectric energy goes through you when you hit the sand, because it goes to a point that they can't read it on the meter anymore so quickly. They see it go up, and then it can't be read anymore because they don't know how much energy. They don't have a meter. They don't have a way to read that much energy.
Are you
and
able?
So,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, finish your thought. Sorry.
Oh no. So at these different locations, when you're dealing with the heart and the heartbeat, or when you're creating with your mind, or you're creating with your vocal cords, the repetition, the repeated imagination, the repeated emotion corresponding, the repeated vocal cords begin to build up energy that brings it into manifestation. That's using Kabbalah's living language, brings it into manifestation. But it has to build up power. When you're standing in a position of power, you better be careful what you think. When you're standing on the beach, be careful what you're thinking. When you're standing in a temple that's producing electricity, be careful with your thoughts. This is why they say when you step into these holy places, take your shoes off. Make sure your heart is clear. Make sure you fast before you get there. The reason they give all of these types of instructions for holy places is not because of some woogity boogity. It's because when you walk into the holy place and the energy is there, you need to be pure, because whatever you think about, emote about, or deal with is going to manifest much quicker than it would if you were standing in a non-energized location.
Can you see this on the screen? I tried to blow it up.
Yes, indeed.
Now, can you see the BS description? 2013 new monument, right? Well, let me be careful, because okay, that could be of a truth, but the main focus I want you to see, if you could just read that where it says new monument found, where it's found at.
New monument found at El Peru Huaca in Guatemala.
Okay. So what we call ley lines are called Waka. And Waka is defined as any place where there is a monument of a sacred nature or an archaeological, not, I don't want to say just discovery, but an archaeological foundational sacred place. Now I'm going to give you another. We're going to do this right here. Let's see. Here is another here in North America terminology. Many of you may be familiar with this if you're familiar with our channel.
Yeah.
If you just discovered. But this term, where the other ley lines in the adjoined land further northward, depending on your juxtaposition and your orientation of the maps or cartography. Cahokia Mounds. It tells you these are cities which existed, they're saying, between 1050 and 1350 Common Era, directly across the Mississippi River from present-day St. Louis or St. Louis, right. The state archaeology park lies in southwestern Illinois, they say, that has the name. The park covers 2,200 acres, or about 3.5 square miles. Now, this is just what's left on the surface, okay? Some of us already can be quite sure of that, and others of us, still have some things to discover. But archaeology's been hiding a lot of these places, because when the right people are back in those places, they can make certain things change circumstantially, situationally. Yeah, it's pretty much
the gist. They're like the perfect transponder, or the perfect wire. You know what I mean? It's just like if you got an electrical current, then the electrical points are at certain locations. If you put the electrical point away from it, the electricity has to travel to get there. But if you put it right on top of it, you put it right dead smack on top of it, then you can tower out right there. You can tower out right there, and it's going to produce a field.
Absolutely. Let's see here. I'm going to pull one more thing up. So another spelling of that, for those who'd like to go a little further into it on their own later, for Waka, this is another spelling and another way of saying Waka. So it shows you of the Quechuan languages of South America, a huaca or waka is an object that represents something revered, typically a monument of some kind. Now, of course, they're going to give you that, but I've seen at least 2 different documentaries where the priests in Peru, which I apologize, I am not familiar with the way that they refer to themselves, so I'm not going to try to go any further in explanation of that, but you can use that as a reference point that they sit at these gates that are invisible to the naked human eye on structures that sit along these lines that they call waka. And they have cocaine in the powder form. They have candy, and they have one other plant. Okay, and then those things are used to either offer to the ancient beings that some would refer to as gods, that they look at something, I say in a much more reverent form than even the term God, but also connected to who they are in their blood relationship, extended from the time where they walked the earth in the physical form, and they make an offering, or they imbibe or partake of the candy as that being or ancestor or God bids them to in order to have an experience that will further allow them to communicate with one another, to convey important information or messages for the rest of the people who revere this place, this space, and these beings for what they have done to hold that place together through all of the colonization, through all of the attacks on the Incan Empire and that particular, area of the mountain chain, and specific, check out the mountain chain, the certain Serpentine Mountains or Serpent Mountains, the Blue Serpent Mountains, where you get the term Amaru, where you get the ancient ruler Tupac Amaru Shakur, not the rapper, but that's where the rapper's mother got the name attribution from. It's very interesting study. But yes, those lines, as my brother has been mentioning, they're significant to the blood. I would say when you look at the lines, you're seeing the trail of the blood, not necessarily in the spilling of blood per se, as much as it is the birthing into the realm where blood is exchanged. And what's the word I'm looking for, brother? Where the mother passes on her genetic coding to the children.
Right. That's it right there. That's
genetic coding to the children that come from his four mothers. Literally his four mothers, where his genetic part of his genetic presentation or appearance, aesthetics.
That's why it's not common for a person to be able to name their mother, their grandmother, their great grandmother, and their great great grandmother. That's by design. Because number one, if you find her, you find where you started. If you find her, you find where your land was. If you find her, you find where your genetic resonance is. If you find her, you can usually, well, some you got to go further back because it was quicker space, but you trace them back, you find your lineage, your culture, your name, your land, all of the things that they tried to hide from you is found in her. This is the reason they be like, she is God and all of those things, even though God and goddess is two different words. I don't know why people feel it necessary to say she is God. She is God is saying goddess. So why they say that is beyond me. But whatever. I can understand. Huh? Go ahead.
The reason why they separate gender and separate race is because they have a limited scope and a programmed response to aesthetics. What is presented on the outside is only a reflection of what's been contributed in.
Wait a minute,
inside, right? But go ahead.
They may be doing the very thing that they claim that they so against. It's a patriarchal. It's a patriarchal thing. If you're trying to call the woman God, but you still got to use God, then you are a programmed patriarch. Patriarchal programming. In order for her to have some value, she got to be a god, huh? Anyway.
Yeah, but okay. Shout out to Nub's Revenge. I don't know who you are, but thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. I appreciate it. He said Nub's Revenge says in a duality, we must have separation. Otherwise, it is not a duality. But that's not really the essence or spirit of what we're discussing. The separation of light. For example, when we deal with a text that says, for example, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. That division is only brought forth for the same reason as day and night, and that is to illuminate what is present, even when it's dark, right? So a female, for example, is introverted male. A male is an extroverted female. Now, it would be somewhat of a falsehood to say they're one and the same, but we have to be careful because of the society we live in that has such a premature way of assessing detail, and they programmed us to think in this manner, right? So we can't say that they're one and the same, but we can't see the similarity because we're so focused on the difference, right? Would you agree or disagree, brother?
Yeah, I agree. And duality, you're thinking in terms of duality is necessary for balance and to be present. One can be balanced in their own self. These are perceptions that we have to take an opportunity to examine polarity, and see that sometimes there may be more electrons, more protons, more neutrons, less electrons, and that is balanced depending on what it is. There's a different balance for each element. There's a different balance for each thing. So when you say that you have to have a duality, it doesn't mean that you have to have an opposing force. It just means that you have to have that balance.
Yeah, I mean, and polarity, it usually in the mind it's presented as opposing, right? But really, we're talking about counter, contra, words like that, right? Doesn't necessarily mean, like you say, opposing in the sense of against, but
right.
It is juxtapositionally opposite in some instances. But with the masculine and feminine, what I was getting at with the masculine and feminine is that they're of equal importance. And what happens is because of certain imbalances that have been allowed to occur, you have one fighting to try to catch up to the other when they were never ahead of or behind the other. And that's what creates the imbalance that is the perception of reality as opposed to the true reality. Like we've even talked about how the face of things like white supremacy has to be a dark-skinned one. Even if you get into the point of who's calling the shots, if you look at the laws as opposed to the unlawful actions of humanity, we will see who's actually behind the laws that are being made. And if you look at the voter base in some instances, or the suppression of certain votes, you will see the reason for certain laws being accepted, or voted into being, right? And so you will see how that echo going on again. Sorry, audience, but we're gonna get fixed here. You see the inequity and the injustice being magnified, especially within forums like the media platforms, now that they're so plenteous. You have people who are also focused on those things as opposed to the balanced story. It's done with intent, and that intent is not for the betterment or growth. Would you agree, or would you?
It's a divisionary tactic.
Yeah.
It's a divisionary tactic because here's the truth of the matter, since we're dealing in Kabbalah's language, living language. Now, if I'm speaking to a person in Kabbalah's living language, we have the capability to create an AC/DC current between the two. Or now I want to say AC/DC, but we have the capability to create a current between the two of us that is bioelectric production in itself. So the divisionary tactics that came between us, like us not wanting to embrace our position, our hormonal makeup, our looks, or whatever, or all of these different reasons to fight each other, kick them out the home, and I'll give you money. You know what I'm saying? As far as what is that? Child support and everything like that. You got to come after the person in order to get help and money and everything like that. All of those were implemented as a disempowering thing, so that you couldn't use your Kabbalah's living language between two people to create a current of your own. They want you to create those type of currents in your workspace. They want you to create those types of currents at church. They want those types of currents in places where that can be regulated.
Indeed.
as opposed to at home where it can't be regulated. And then once you and your woman agree, or you and your woman and your children agree, then you, your woman, your children, and other family members agree, then there's no reins that they can't be in control of that. So, that's just to address the Kabbalah's living language of the household and the family structure. Even that was attacked. You know what I mean? So, yeah, addressing that too.
Absolutely. It's just like, okay, so I'm looking at the term householder, and they've changed the definition already because people are becoming more and more aware of the use of this Kabbalist language even within the law elements of real estate law. Like everything, they have all these categories within law, and they all go back to commercial use. Some commercial value being assigned, which translates to energetic exchanges, or one capturing the energy of another, or getting more energy within the exchange than they're giving out. And it's just interesting, like householder and husbandman. A husbandman would be dealing with a farmer. Why? Because a farmer generally domesticates plants and animals, meaning they can cultivate an area in which the plant life works in unison with them, but is in a natural enough environment but it would thrive in, right? But being overseen and nurtured at the same time. Same with the animal life. That's why they call it domesticated animals. Even so, the ones that are slaughtered and used for clothing, food, medical use, etc. So those used to be one and the same because you couldn't be a husbandman if you didn't have land, and you couldn't have land if you weren't a household. And so all of these terms, like going into even the legalism that you're describing, where you can't cohabitate with this man and still receive support or subsidy, and we'll make sure that the man cannot receive equal pay or be considered a skilled tradesman in the union hall based upon something as aesthetic as complexion or let's say what's the word looking for, or their class or their caste or their ethnic culture.
Oh, they're not gonna like this one, Jay. I'm gonna hit them with it anyway. We all children of the sun, all of us. Oh, I'm gonna let that boil their blood for a minute before I explain it. Is your blood boiling yet? So we're all children of the sun. Our melanin content is uromelanin, phenomelanin, and neuromelanin. Your melanin content.
Melanin. Sorry, I hate EU melanin. It's pronounced
EU melanin. EU melanin. I call it uromelanin. I don't know what EU melanin, phenomelanin, and neuromelanin.
Right. Yeah.
And your melanin content is based on your solar exposure and your geographical location. Everybody has a melanin content, even cave people who spent the predominant portion of their early time in ancient history in the cave systems. Even they have a melanin content. It's just some are higher in pheno, some are higher in EU, and some are higher in neuromelanin, giving them each an area of expertise. And that even is a part of the living language. When you talk about the Kabbalah, know that when we're saying your genetics match the earth, we're saying that that's a living language that's being spoken there. When we're saying that the walls and the cathedral windows match the DNA, that's a language being spoken. When I tell you that cuneiform on a I want to say a seismograph, but it's not a seismograph. It's where you can put sound and it'll give you a geometrical shape. If you take back to the cuneiform linguistics and you make the sounds that correspond to the letter, the shape that shows up on the plate in sand or in water or whatever form you're using is an exact match for the depiction that they use to write the letter. So let me give you an example so I can make that plain if you didn't understand what I said. If it's a circle and the sound is O, when you make that O sound, on the sides on the table will show up the symbol, the O. You know what I mean? The O will show up on the sound graph. That's because we were speaking a living language.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we work with the living language. Like we've mentioned, the dead languages, right? A lot of them they called romance languages, right? So we're gonna have to get into it one of these days. Not necessarily because we had an hour. We had an hour and a half.
Okay.
I feel like we've given them something to chew on. But listen, it ain't just about what I think. The language of the dead is one that is used within religion. It's not to discourage from seeking out morality, discipline, right? Because that's where a lot of people utilize religion to gain those things from. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not even saying that I'm not in need of it from time to time. But understand, a lot of that is where you're picking up the death that you speak to yourself. Remember,
and then, like you
brought this up earlier, Christ, he said life and death. Death and life, according to their quotation. I wasn't there, but the way it's written, it said death and life was the first option. And it's like, why? Well, we're being taught even about his life that he was born to die for us. Just ponder that. Don't have to say nothing yet. Ponder that for a minute and see where it takes you. I want to hear where it takes you though by next week. So even if you comment
this will be my last little point, and this is something for them to go discover on find out what the meanings of ink colors are, what the meaning of black ink, blue ink, red ink, purple ink. Find out what the meanings of those inks are, and then realize that the predominant contracts and signatures that we engage in are in black ink. And then some people write
not ready for
the Messiah's words in red ink. What'd you say now?
They're not ready for that. They're not ready for that. We have no business teaching that. I'm just kidding. Yeah, English is
so go look that.
English is
look that up, and even that is a Kaballah. But anyway, even that's a Kaballah form.
In the written form, English is up there to answer you Nub's revenge, but in the spoken form, not necessarily. Because in the spoken form, you can find the vast majority of Algonquin, Muskogean, Iroquoian, Siouan, and Athabascan language systems within English. And they lie to us about what English was derived from. They just have some phonetic similarities between some of the dead languages that they wanted to conjure up in order to implement their legal system. And they did a very good job of it. Well performed. But, people are vastly and quickly learning how to undo the spell work and how to speak the word of God from within over their situation and reclaim jurisdiction. That's the first and foremost thing. People get into all types of discussions of sovereignty and direction of status and legalism. Power has been in the and is mightier than the sword. Man, that echo is bad, but it's still understanding.
They even gotta put that man's word in red when it's official. They still gotta put his words in red.
Nobody's alive. Just kidding. Ponder that statement too, if you like. Now, here's the thing. They're using a dead form of romantic language to dictate what you can and can't do. It contains other forms of, and then, consider this. What is the correlation between the term French and the term free? I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. It ain't going to take long. I dare you. And then you'll start to understand. You'll start
Something interesting to look up too is what frequency is the body considered dead at?
There's no legal English. Legal English would be rooted in Latin still, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. So then there's spoken living language. There's written living language, and usually we didn't cover this part. My bad, brother. We didn't cover this part. Not cuneiform, pictographic. What we call hieroglyphic. And see, everything has to be renamed in a dead terminology. Okay? So you go from pictographic, or whatever the ancient word was for that. I would love somebody to teach me that one. But demotic, hieratic, and hieroglyphic. You're dealing with Greek. You're still dealing with dead, hellish language. Yes, I said. Go run tell that. Hellish language, which was adopted from the living Mycenaean, Greek, Etruscan, Macedonian. But it's not too far from us. But the legal, what you're saying, legal, some people call legalese, it's dead Latin French. So you have freedmen who are speaking dead language over those who they consider dead. Thus the statement I quoted from the Bible earlier: let the dead bury their dead. I'll let y'all ponder.
So does that mean, you can give it life? You give life to a contract, or you can kill a contract by a declaration?
They call it rescinding. And then most contracts are signed under threat, duress, or coercion, but that's a whole other show.
We got to leave it alone because we'll go.
For that, even in the language of Latin, it's called compulsive, abbreviated C, which means an act that I am coerced or compelled to commit that is against my own will cannot be considered my action. It's like if someone held a gun to your head and gave you a gun and told you to shoot yourself. Who would do that? You got a 50-50 chance to turn the gun on and gun to your head. And y'all both might die, or it might just be you. But either way, if you die by his bullet, you didn't unalive yourself. I don't. It's just all in the way you look at it. Yeah, that echo is killer. Thank you, Nubs Revenge, for contribution today. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Whoever's been tuning in, I've noticed about 5 or 6 of you all watching. Every time
thank you for tuning.
Vibrating an echo. But thank you all for watching. Like, share, subscribe. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching today, everyone. Yes, the Beyond the Veil is an unusual podcast. You can catch us on Rumble at Deeper Dives Unlimited on rumble.com. You can catch us on YouTube, https://youtube.com/ at Jay.Drewz3692. You can find T and I. You can also find the other podcast, Deeper Dives Dialogue Unlimited, which is also the not call letters. I'm so used to radio. I'm telling on myself. But you can see that at rumble.com/ Deeper Dives Dialogue, UNL. And then we have a locals channel through Rumble. I know some people aren't really on Rumble, but hey, you should go on ahead and get you a membership and subscribe. If you podcast yourself or you have just opinions you want to rant on, it's a free speech platform, which is why we chose it. Also, check us out. Shout out to Schwable Room Media, Schwable Room Media on YouTube. You can catch us there also. blackshaman.com. You can order your herbs, your cleansing products, your dietary supplements, your parasitic elimination agents await your call or your contact. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, no, that was it. That was it. And there's some energy clearance as well. And I hope that you use these keys that we've given you over these 2 episodes to activate and utilize your Kaballah living language, that you have some idea of how to direct and formulate your own energy to bring you something that is good.
Well said. Well said. We appreciate you once again. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Join our locals. Spread the word. We want a bigger party. We want to grow. We want to be able to evolve. We want to be able to bring you deeper and more detailed information that we're gathering on a higher level of consciousness. Thanks for your support, y'all.